New restrictions come into place tonight in Australia in the effort to control the spread of coronavirus and limit the deaths. The move comes because the number of cases in Australia continues to double every 3 to 4 days, now well over 2,000. The death toll is 8. The number of cases in New South Wales alone is now over 1,000. So let's take a run through of some of the developments. So from midnight tonight, here is what is shut down in Australia. Public swimming pools, indoor entertainment centres, real estate auctions can't be held or open houses, and in-store beauty treatments will all be closed down. Hairdressers will still be permitted to operate, but customers must not be on the premises for more than 30 minutes. The Prime Minister says there should be no gatherings of more than 10 people. Weddings will be restricted to only the couple, the celebrant and witnesses, totalling no more than 5 people, while funerals will be restricted to 10 people. Australians will be banned from travelling overseas. The government says a small number of people had been defying the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade's do not travel warning. New South Wales now has more than 1,000 coronavirus infections after 211 new cases were confirmed overnight. So globally now, over 400,000 COVID-19 cases have been confirmed, while there have been more than 18,500 deaths, many of those in Italy. India has announced it'll impose a 3-week lockdown on its 1.3 billion people, with only essential services continuing to operate. The Tokyo Olympics have been formally postponed for a year after the Japanese government and the International Olympic Committee agreed that it could not go ahead. The World Health Organization has warned the US may be becoming the global centre of the pandemic. There are over 50,000 cases there now, over half of which are in New York alone. And on Wall Street, the Dow has seen its biggest one-day percentage gain since 1933, with hopes Congress will soon pass a $2 trillion rescue package. It surged by more than 11%, or more than 2,000 points, to close at 20,705. And here in Australia, just in the last hour or so, Virgin Airlines has announced that it's grounding 125 aircraft, 90% of its domestic capacity, as it struggles to cope with the economic effects of the pandemic. 80% of the airline's workforce will be temporarily stood down. Virgin subsidiary Tiger Airlines will stop flying until the pandemic is over. Virgin will continue flying within Australia at 10% capacity to ensure essential services and critical freight and logistics. So much happening again around the world to do with coronavirus today. And let's focus now on Australia. So Australians are being urged to only leave their homes if absolutely necessary. The new directive has been issued by the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, overnight. It includes those restrictions I mentioned before. Our political reporter, Stephanie Borys, joins us now from Parliament House in Canberra. Steph, g'day. So take us through these restrictions in a bit more detail. I've mentioned some of them already, and also the messaging behind that we saw overnight.
Good morning, Joe. Yeah, you're right. There is a lot to digest from last night's press conference of the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, and the Chief Medical Officer, Brendan Murphy. So first of all, taking a look at what you and I and all of our family and friends across Australia should be doing. So stay home unless it's essential to head out. What's considered essential is if you need to go to work, if you need to go to the grocery store to get some food, or if you need to go to a medical appointment. You are also still allowed to exercise, but not in large groups. The Prime Minister also saying if you can work from home, please do so. When it comes to having people over at your house for a barbecue, for a birthday party, that all has to stop. No more gatherings, whether it be outside or in your home. Also, no house parties. We have heard talk of people saying, well, let's host house parties now that pubs are closed. That is not allowed either. Don't congregate in groups of more than 10 if you're outside. You are allowed to exercise with a friend or family member that you live with. The Victorian Premier, Daniel Andrews, put it very bluntly this morning, saying if people don't follow these rules, people will die. And late last night, the Chief Medical Officer, Brendan Murphy, said that, yes, these are very tough measures and is very drastically changing the way that we all live and how we socialise, but they are essential moves.
These measures are really draconian. We know that, but if we're going to control community transmission, we have to stop the capacity of this virus from spreading from person to person. And as I've said many times, it is a long haul, and that's why we are keen to keep society functioning, but keep society safe. Some people have been doing things like being told they're a positive case and going into the chemist or the supermarket on the way home. If you're isolating because you're a positive case or you're isolating because you're a contact, you go home and you isolate and you obey those rules. That is a really, really important part of the control.
The Chief Medical Officer there, Brendan Murphy, really trying to get that message through to Australians that if you come back from overseas or if you test positive to coronavirus, you must stay home for 14 days. You must self-isolate. We're hearing increasingly from the Prime Minister and from state and territory leaders that people are not following that directive, and obviously that is then putting other people's lives at risk. So we do understand that state and territory police officers are making calls and checking up on people to ensure that they are following those directives.
Yeah, and so it sounds like more and more effort will be put into what's been called contact tracing.
That's right. So contact tracing, if I contract coronavirus, then it's about getting in touch with all those people I've recently been in contact with that potentially could have the virus as well. And obviously that could be difficult if someone's been on a bus or in a shopping centre. So the state and territory governments are looking at whether mobile phones could play a role in this. And they're looking specifically at the technology being rolled out in Singapore. There's an app over there that can determine if someone's been in contact with a coronavirus patient through Bluetooth technology. So New South Wales this morning saying, yes, they are looking at different ways of making sure they can exactly work out who has been in touch with people that test positive to coronavirus.
And Steph, we've run through a couple of those businesses, or a number of those businesses that are going to be required to close their doors from midnight. What's the Prime Minister's messaging around this?
So the Prime Minister said that these were hard decisions to make, and obviously ones that himself and the state and territory leaders were at pains to do, because obviously this puts a lot of people out of work, but in the end health has to come first. And the reason for these business closures is to further stop people congregating together. So just quickly again running through the businesses that will have to close as of midnight: beauticians, nail salons, tattoo parlours, real estate auctions, open house inspections for homes unless you do it by a private appointment, play centres for kids both indoors and outdoors, libraries, galleries, community facilities. Still operating though, Joe, food courts are allowed to remain open but only for takeaway. Hairdressing appointments are okay if it's under 30 minutes. Boot camps outside can still go ahead, but a maximum of 10 people. And then when it comes to weddings, a maximum of 10 people. Funerals, a maximum of 10. And then of course schools, there's been a big conversation around whether they should remain open or not. The Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, insisting that the health advice for now is that it's still safe for children to go to school.
It's going to be a tough year in 2020, and one of the things I don't want to have yielded up is a year of a child's education, which is so important. We need to work so hard together to try and ensure that those kids get that education and that is not lost to this virus. And so I look forward to meeting with Australian Education Union tomorrow and to have that conversation and to see how we can come together and agree how we can continue to deliver that while doing that safely for those who work in schools. And of course for the kids themselves. As we know, the medical advice is kids can safely go to schools.
And Steph, what's the timing on this outright ban on international travel?
So that comes into force from midday, Joe, and that means that no Australians are allowed to travel overseas. There are a few exemptions, such as compassionate reasons if it's essential for work, and also aid workers if they're required overseas. On top of that as well, new offences coming in today for people that collect and buy a stack of hand sanitisers and face masks and then try to either charge Australians more for them or are trying to send them offshore to make a profit. There's a huge crackdown going on that to try and ensure that there are enough supplies here in Australia and at reasonable prices.
Okay, Stephanie Borys there in Canberra.